Good morning and grace to you and peace from God, our Creator, Jesus, our Christ, and the Holy Spirit, who is our comforter. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, I know it's Saturday morning. Yes, I know we usually don't go live, but today is a special day. This is our Men's Day weekend. Tomorrow is Men's Day at the Bethel Church, and usually on Saturday, the Saturday before, we would have some kind of workshop, some kind of activity for the men. Well, y'all know it's the Rona, right? And we're not meeting in person. You know, as we've been saying all year, the most loving thing that we can do in this season is stay home. And in the words of Jesus after the resurrection, touch me not, give me 6 feet. So that's what we're doing. But ministry still needs to happen. And so I'm delighted and excited that here, the Saturday before Men's Day, we're able to have this conversation. Those of you who've been following us know that we've been studying the book, The Code of the Righteous Warrior by Dr. Alyn E. And it has really been a blessing to us. And today we have the opportunity to have a conversation with Dr. Waller. And I'm so excited about it. I'm so pleased that he was able to join us. And so we're welcoming you. I want to encourage you, brothers, sisters, all, go ahead and jump in the comment section, say hello, say good morning to one another, like and share this, we are excited. Now, listen, we're going to have a bit of a conversation between Dr. Waller and I, and then after that, we're going to open it up for your questions. So start thinking now about your questions. Start thinking now about what you may want to ask. All right. So do me a favor, join me in welcoming the author, the pastor of the Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Dr. Alyn E. Waller. Good morning, Dr. Waller.
Good morning, bro. How are you?
Hey, man. It's a little warmer outside today than it was yesterday, so I'm grateful and glad. How are you doing, sir?
Absolutely, man. I am great. And grateful to have an opportunity to have this conversation with you today.
Oh, man. Listen, I appreciate it. I'm excited. As you know, just so that everybody else knows, we had planned last year around this time to have you to come to Dayton, and we were getting some guys together, and we were going to study the book and have some conversation. And then the Rona showed up, and everything just got knocked out of kilter. But we were able, because of the wonders of technology, to try to pull this off again. And I'm just glad we were able to make the schedule jive.
Amen. Amen. I'm grateful for it as well. And I always, you know, we have this really budding fast relationship. Met you during our lot carry work, and you have really, and I just need everybody to know that Xavier has really become a sort of favorite. He's not my son in ministry, but I wish I could claim him. You make me excited about the future of the church. You are part of this next wave of young prophets that are committed to the work. And so our travels to Israel and everything, you have been such a blessing to me and to the work of the lot carry. And so I'm looking forward to what you're going to do. So it's an honor for me to have this particular conversation with you.
Pastor, I appreciate that, man. And thank you. You know, we met for the first time, I think it was during your presidency, and when we were hosting in Philly. And from there, I think you mentioned to me then that we were going to Israel. It kind of told me I was going. So, you know, and then the next year you told me we were going to India. So this has been a great journey, man. I'm grateful for the connection. I appreciate you and the ways in which we share with one another. Well, but listen, let's get into this conversation, because this book is an amazing book. I've read it through a couple times. Now I got to tell you, I got a deacon who's probably read it at least 3-4 times. That's just how he reads books. And it's such a blessing to us. And so I want to maybe start with you talking to us about the inspiration behind this book. Why this book now?
Thank you. It's called Code of the Righteous Warrior. And this really is my thoughts about manhood, and my thoughts about what might be missing in our particular context. So in my other life, I have been a martial artist since, my first karate class was, I guess I was 8 years old. And throughout my life, I've always enjoyed martial arts, sort of the wild and that whole piece, but not just from a fighting perspective. I am what you would call a hopologist. Now, hopology is the study of why people fight or war. And so as an ethnohopologist, I like studying the warrior and the warrior culture of all different types of cultures. And what I believe is that the warrior in every culture has embodied the best of manhood of that culture, whether you're talking about the samurai in Japan or the Maasai in Kenya, the shogun, whoever you're talking about, or the SEAL in America. There is something embodied in that that speaks to what is best and brightest about that particular culture. My assumption, or my thesis, if you will, is that we've lost the warrior in our Black manhood. We've lost. I didn't say we can't fight. Got a whole bunch of brothers that can fight. And when you hear warrior, you think about fighting, but there's so much more to being a warrior. So for me, a righteous warrior is a man who loves God, loves himself, loves his family, and wants to make a difference in the world. And so this book is really a reflection on what I was taught by my father, what it means to be a man, what I have gleaned through biblical search and through my experiences in martial arts and sort of extreme sports world and my travels around the world, because what I found is that there's some basic things that are true about manhood and about the warrior that transcend culture. And in this moment, we need to rescue manhood from the chauvinism of the past. And so I try to hold on to biblical principles without putting our sisters in a box. My wife, I believe in being the head of the house, but my wife, head can't mean boss. And, and it does not mean boss. It means something else. And that's what I've tried to do with this book. And there's a certain vulnerability to getting to that warrior status. And I wanted brothers to get comfortable with most of us, if not all of us, have something that's really fantastic about us and something that's really broken about us. And until you can meet both of those parts of yourself and be okay with it, you're not going to step into who God has created you to be.
Wow, man. Listen, so much. This is so much to talk about. Let's dive. Let's just dive in. You hit some themes that the brothers have been talking about all month, and one of those themes was the way in which you so expertly redefine and reshape what manhood is and means, particularly Christian manhood, right? I think there's even a subsection in one of the chapters that basically says Jesus ain't no punk, right?
Right.
Which was an interesting way to frame it. But so often when we think about Jesus, now I know I can speak for the Bethel Church, and I think I know enough about the Enon Tabernacle Church that this isn't the case in our churches. But most of the time when you hear about Jesus, you think of this blue-eyed, blonde-haired Jesus who's soft, he's carrying the lamb, and that ain't it, man. And if that's your image of Jesus and that's not you as a man, there's a disconnect there, right? And we wonder why we don't have brothers in church. It's because they don't see a Jesus they can identify. Can you say more about that?
And that's important. I think that we were, and we're having this conversation post the Lewis Gates piece on the Black church that just came out. And so probably everybody has that in the back of their head. We were handed, now we came here with a gospel. And I think we need to remember that. But we were handed another gospel through the slave experience, and they neutered Jesus in that understanding. By intention, give us a Jesus that just puts up with everything and just loves the children of the world. And I believe that we love the children of the world, but I see also a Jesus who walks into the temple and disrupts. He is a disruptive leader. I see a Jesus who is a carpenter. I understand meekness not to be weakness, but it is power held in check. And so I embrace nonviolence, but I embrace it from a different perspective. My embrace of nonviolence comes from this. I don't want to deal with the legal issues of what's going to happen when this fight is over between me and you. And that's why I choose to be nonviolent. I don't want to go to jail. It's not a question of what's going to happen.
You make me put my hands on you.
Exactly.
I want to do that, right?
And that's okay, so it still achieves nonviolence, but it comes from a completely different place. And, think about our community. When people think security, they think fruit of Islam. When people think of manhood in church, they think choir. And I'm a musician. You're a musician. There is a typecast of what a church man is that keeps a lot of brothers from ever coming in. And I wanted to suggest that the church is for all of us. So it is also for the choir boy. But there are brothers in here. There are men in here. And you can embrace the gospel of love and family and hold on to that our fathers have taught us about what it means to be a man. Now, there's a chauvinism, but for sure to be challenged. And I want to challenge toxic masculinity. And I think the answer to toxic masculinity is what we're talking about here, because sometimes what I just did can come from a space of bravado and fear. Mm-hmm. And so then when you find these guys who just want to fight all the time and want to show who they are with their prowess and their money and their stuff, that comes from a very little man that doesn't know who he is. But when you really embrace who you are and embrace the good and bad of who you are, then you can step into the space with a full manhood.
It's as I think I said in our conversations with the brothers this month, you don't have to be soft to be saved, right? Right. But the other end of that, and something that I appreciate that you did in the book, is you also do the real work, particularly among, I think, Black men, of dismantling patriarchy, of challenging homophobia, of all of those things that also plague us as a community, right? It's not this either or. There is a both and I appreciate that. I want to pivot, because one of the things that we picked out of the book quickly was that one of the running themes is the value of relationships.
Yeah.
You talk about not being the Marlboro man, not being Shaft, right? Nobody understands him but his woman. Right. Not being the Lone Ranger. What do you think the most important relationships in a man's life, and how can we as men get better at cultivating meaningful, life-giving relationships?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think we need to. I derive a lot from when I talk about the 4 P's, or really 5 P's of personhood. That's God addressing Adam. So a lot of my fundamental theology about who we are comes from how God created Adam. And so, but then once Adam is all together with those 4 P's, God says it's not good that he's alone. So we fundamentally need to know that even if you have your own power, your place, your purpose, and your parameters, you still need to have a partner. And that means this, when God said it's not good for man to be alone, he wasn't just talking about marriage. God, who is intrinsically social, was suggesting that mankind cannot experience the fullness of God's creation intentionality without being in community with others. And one of the things that we need to hear is that is not totally answered in marriage, so that men need other men. And so I think we have to rescue the David and Jonathan from some of the liberal interpretations and hear that David and Jonathan, when it says that David loved Jonathan, Jonathan loved David, and it surpassed the love of a woman, that was not meant to be understood in sort of this liberal understanding, but it was meant to be understood that there's a place in human relatedness that goes beyond sex. There is a piece of me that you need. There's a piece of, I'm about to be 57 and you still on the front end of 40s. You still staring at them. There's between where I am and where you are, there's a whole lot of life about to happen. And there's a whole lot of traumatizing experiences with your manhood that you're about to go through. And that's a conversation that you and I need to have. And that we need each other. There are some things that Eve can't do. And so that becomes important. And so often what we miss in our manhood is other men who can hold us accountable, who we can be honest with, who we can share. And so, some of this harkens back to the old Promise Keeper stuff. Every man needs a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy. And I accept that language. But I add to that, every man needs another man that you're working on. So I've got Paul, that's a mentor. I've got a Barnabas, that's a friend who loves me but is not impressed by me. I've got a Timothy who I'm trying to pull up. And I've got an unsaved brother who helps me remember my purpose as a Christian. And those four relationships become extremely important. And I try to challenge in the book men to make sure you have those men in your life.
Wow. And what something that came out this week in our conversation was, you talk about the 4 Greek words for love, right? And,
yes.
And I'm always the professor in me always cringes when I hear preachers get up. There's 3 Greek words. No, there are 4, brother, sister. There are 4. but that notwithstanding, one of the things you talk about is the need for men to also cultivate platonic, deep, meaningful relationships with women, right? Yeah. And the That's challenge of that, because I think you're right. We need relationships. So those who are married, you need to have a solid relationship with your wife. Those of us brothers, we need to have a solid relationship with another brother. But I also think that when it comes to dismantling some of the patriarchy that we see and the chauvinism, that a part of that is the way many of us as men have been socialized to look at and to think about women, right? If she ain't my wife, my mama, or my sister, can you say a bit more about that and the importance of that in the development of a man as a righteous warrior?
Right. Thank you for that. The Bible, in Song of Songs, in the 8th chapter, there's a reference. It says that we have a little sister who has no breast. What shall we do for her in the day of her marriage? And then it's very flowery language. And basically it says, if she be a door, we will, if she be a wall, we will cover it. No, if she be a door, we will encase her with, we will encase her. And the language is this: we have a sister. If she's a wall, we will celebrate it. If she's open door, we will close the door. We have a responsibility to have a relationship with our sisters that transcends sexuality, bottom line. Most of us have not been raised that way. We were raised to go out and date girls, period. We were raised to go out and get it. And so we have to challenge that theology, but also try to talk about the Timothy passage that says, rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, the younger men as brothers, the older women as sisters, the older women as mothers, the younger women as sisters in all purity. The ability to do that begins with healthy relationships in your house.
Wow.
The extent to which my relationship with my sister and my female cousins becomes the platform that I train to then bring that to the rest of the women of the world. My healthy relationship with my father is what gives me the ability to have healthy relationships with all older men. So it becomes important for every man to do his homework, making sure that your relationships with your father, your mother, your brother, your sisters, your cousins is tight, because they are the roadmap for everyone else. When you find a brother who over-sexualizes every relationship with a woman, you probably also find a brother who has brokenness in his home. When you find a brother who cannot handle authority from anybody, you find someone who's wrestled with authority at home. That I believe my systems background suggests to me that a lot of this work has to happen first with our mothers and our fathers, our brothers and our sisters, and healing those wounds. And out of the health of those relationships, we are then able to share that. So my sister in my church should receive the benefit of my relationship with my physical sister, my biological sister, my biological cousin, because that's where I learned how to do it.
It's almost like you're in my head thinking through some of the questions that I want to ask you today, because you've shifted right into another topic that I think men struggle with, right? And that is the relationship with our fathers. And you talk a lot about fatherhood. You talk a lot about your relationship with your father and some of the challenges there. What advice do you have for men who struggle with, one, their relationship with their father, or two, with being a father?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Number one, I think we need to hear the Bible, first of all, that says we got to get that right. So, first commandment with promise, Bible 101, honor your mother and father. Bottom line, you've got to get it right. It is your responsibility to get to a place where you can honor your father. So that's number one. Number two, give him room to be broken. Give him room to not be perfect. Number three, I'm grateful. My father was my hero, but in being my hero, it really pushed me at one point. You've seen the picture. I have a picture of me sitting on Martin Luther King's lap, right? And so I'm sitting on Martin Luther King's lap, September of 1967, because Martin Luther King is my father's friend. So when I became a pastor, I'm thinking I got to keep up with my dad. So when my children were 3 and 4, I'm looking around at which one of my friends is the Martin Luther King of this day. And I'm like, I don't know that I see any of my crew. And then I feel like I'm failing because I couldn't keep up. Well, a couple of things happened. Number one, I had to realize that when my children were 3, I was 29. And when I was 3, my father was almost 50. And so there are different stages in life. And I had to accept that I'm not trying to keep up with him. And I can't keep up with him. I can't be him. My father was a wordsmith preacher, like your predecessor. And I'm just not that smart. And so I had to literally allow for my father to be my father. I also had to accept that my father wasn't perfect. And when my father's imperfections were right in my face, I had to, number one, allow for him to be imperfect. Number two, I had to allow for the fact that he is who he is, I am who I am, and take from him what I could and leave the rest with him, up to and including writing him a letter posthumously. My father was dead, and I wrote him a letter to say, Dad, thank you for equipping me. Thank you. Because what he did do, my father installed me at Enon and then went home to be with the Lord 3 months later. And he literally said in 1994, when he installed me, we were sitting in the office and he said, I think you can make it from here. And he died that December. And so I think my father set me up for success, but I can't do it his way. And I wrote him that letter, took it to grave, buried it in the ground. Now, I know theologically he did not read it. I know theologically, just in case, I know that I'm talking to your church and you are theologically astute, and I don't want anybody to think I'm getting spooky. I know he didn't read it. I know that it's probably been cleaned up by somebody, but as an exercise to get me healthy, I wrote him a letter thanking him for all he did, also letting him know I won't be doing everything his way, and because I can't stay on his schedule. But that then enables me to embrace him today. That's why the book is littered with his axioms, because he really was a good man with warts.
You know, you raised something else that was one of the themes in the book. And like I said, having been able to be in relationship with you and to travel with you and have conversation and look, I know you are a competitive guy. I mean, you're a competitive guy. And that's one of the themes that runs through the book. And you just talked about, even at one point, almost feeling like you were in competition in ministry with your father. So many men struggle with that, right? They look at their friends, they look at, big brothers, cousins, their fathers who may be ahead of them, are maybe gifted in ways and they're not gifted, and they suffer with these feelings of inadequacy. They suffer from constantly feeling like they need to try to catch up and compete and beat. What do you have to say to the brother who's where he is in life is like, yo, you know what? I'm looking at the cards I got, and these are the only cards I got. Like, this is the hand I was dealt, and I'm trying to do the best I can with it, but I just don't feel like my hand is as good. What do you have to say to that, brother?
Yeah, and thank you for that. Because I do wrestle with that, and my peers. I mean, I have always in ministry now. I'm going on 30 years pastoring, right? And I have always felt when I get a good, every now and then we get one of those good invitations, that conference there. I still sometimes feel like, okay, who canceled that y'all called me? Who? And my peers, and the people that are listening to us right now probably know the names that I will call: Freddie Haynes, William Curtis, Rudy McKissick. Those are all my friends. And I spent an inordinate amount of time jealous of their gifts. And because I couldn't do, in my estimation, I didn't have what they have. And I really felt bad about it. But what I realized is that it frustrated the relationship. They didn't do anything to me. I was feeling bad. But this was a thing that I had for a while, and it had nothing to do with them. There was a period in time when I thought I was going to be a singer. Little fact that I know you're in Ohio. The original Levert was me, Gerald, and Mark, before Sean was old enough to sing. We all grew up in Shaker Heights up there in Cleveland. And, my life began with music, and I thought I was going to be the music dude. And God called me in the ministry. I've done music, but he never let me have that season. I can remember back in the day watching Bobby Jones, and somebody would come on, early days of Donnie McClurkin, and I'd be like, what's so special about him? And that was a root of bitterness that was in me that I needed to exercise out. And the way that I was able to exercise that out is, number one, totally embrace who I am and allow the fact that I'm not any of those names that I called, but I'm the best me. And not every situation calls for Alan Waller, but for every situation in this world that calls for Alan Waller, I'm the best Alan Waller on the planet. And I really got comfortable with that. I don't preach like Billy or Freddie or Rudy, but I do preach like me. And that's more than good enough. What I also had to do is I actually had to say that to them. I had a conversation with them, and Billy is one of my closest friends. Freddie and I are very close, and I thank God for their friendship and my being willing, and they're allowing me to be vulnerable enough to say it. And then you gain a confidence. I have them preach at Enon every year, and it's a wonderful experience. And so I would challenge every person that's listening to me to understand everything's not for you. And there are other people with other gifts, but that does not diminish your gift. It just helps you to define your lane. So that was very important for me. I also talk about in the book that same season is when I wrestled with alcohol, but I recognized the two were connected. When you're not feeling good about yourself and you need external support, if you're not careful, you will go and self-medicate and do all of that stuff to try to help you get up in the morning. And so it is when I was able to come to grips with, I'm the best Alyn Waller that anybody has ever met. And Alyn Waller doesn't fit every situation, but for every situation that needs an Alyn Waller, I'm the best out here. That helped me do the work of becoming who I would call the righteous warrior. And one of the reasons that I wanted to say that to people is everybody thinks of someone in recovery or someone who wrestles with alcohol or anything like that as someone who's jacked up, someone who's not functioning, someone who's about to lose everything. The reality is my ministry has been wonderful, and God, for whatever God's reasons are, has protected. He didn't let me tear it up. Not that I couldn't have, but God kept me in the midst of that. And so there's somebody that's looking at this right now who is highly functional, successful, and torn up on the inside. And that's who I wrote this for as well, because no one would suspect that you're thinking what you're thinking, that you're feeling what you're feeling, but it will ultimately destroy you. And I'm glad that God snatched me before he let it kill me.
Wow.
And that's the stuff that I need somebody to understand. And that's what it means to be a righteous warrior. And then that's when you're really ready. I'm ready to live life in a way, particularly in this season. The reason why I want to talk to young guys is success is not how quickly you can drive a Benz in your 30s. You want to get up here around 57 and have grown children who still love you. You want to, if you're a preacher, you want to get up here near 60 and have children who love God and love the church and have not been traumatized by the mendacity and hypocrisy of this journey. You want to get up here and have a grandchild that wants to be around you. It's one thing to be married for 10 years. It's a whole nother thing to stack decades on it and be with someone who knows you in and out and still can smile at you. You want to be able to land this plane after you take it off. And that's what is success. And that's what this book tries to help brothers do.
Doc, you've moved into another area that I think we want to spend some time talking about. And I want to encourage those who are out there to begin to formulate your questions. We're going to call for them in the chat for a minute, in a minute or so. But brokenness, right? You say at one point in the book that the righteous warrior knows he has achieved what he's trying to achieve. He gets to the point where his is under his feet. And he's standing there and he's dealt with his brokenness, whether that's going to therapy, whether that. Okay. So many brothers are broken in so many different areas, and we're taught as men to be strong, Don't show anybody your weakness. Don't show anybody where you're struggling, that you have a problem. Do whatever you have to do, just deal with it. Can you talk a little bit about what it means as a man to be able to identify the areas in your life that are broken, and then to make the decision that I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to be proactive. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Thank you for that. The biggest fight in your life is not with somebody else. It's with you. All of us, I mean, if we're Christians, we believe this theologically. We are born broken. We don't know what that brokenness is when we come out, but over time, it will show itself. Some of it is heredity. Some of it is the trauma of how you're raised. But all of us have, I like to say, we have something about us that is ugly and something about us that is awesome. The people that we call friends are the people who can live at the corner of ugly and awesome in our lives. It may not be your fault of what it is, but it is your responsibility to deal with it. And so in dealing with it is identifying it. And your brokenness doesn't mean that the best of who you are is not true as well. You know, I had an opportunity when William J. Shaw became the president of the National Baptist Convention. One of the things that he did in 1999 is he allowed a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer to follow him for the first few business meetings of the National Baptist, because you remember back then, I mean, it was torn up, right? And this reporter was committed to telling the truth. But the reporter said to me, he says, I don't believe that just because I discover what's wrong with you, I've discovered your truth. The problem with America is we assume that if I know what's wrong with you, I know your truth. That if you are messed up over here, that's what's true. But this other part, this good part, is not true. Well, no, they're both true. I am exactly who you see in the pulpit, and I'm also this broken guy. And that's what's true about everybody listening today. And our responsibility is to live into the awesomeness and work on the ugliness and do what you have to do with that. And the people that you bring into your life are the people who can live there. And what I mean by that is there are some people who can handle the ugly because they've known me from birth, but they can't see the awesome because they only see the ugly. Mm-hmm. Now, there are some people who see the awesome, but I dare not show them the ugly because they'll lose sight of the awesome. And then there's a small crew of people who can live at the ugly and awesome nexus, see the ugly, affirm the awesome, and help you work on the ugly. That's who you call friend. And that's the stuff that we need. And it's an age old, it's a fight. Now, the reality is this also it's seasonal. There's some stuff that's not an issue anymore because I'm nearing 60. But then there are new things on the table. So, you know, sin at 25 is one thing. Sin in your late 50s is another thing. And so you don't need to go out here and name sin. We need to be talking about your differentiation between you and your thing, or your it, if you will. And I challenge men. That's why we do the whole thing with 4 quarters in the book, because you need to know what quarter you're in, and understand what the challenges are right now. So, for instance, 1994, when I got to Philadelphia, it was real easy to say, I'll say what I want. I don't care what it gets me uninvited to. I don't care if the mayor doesn't invite me to anything, because in 1994, he wasn't inviting me anyhow. In 1994, nobody in the city of Philadelphia cared what I said. That's a different thing today. pretty much anything that happens in this city, I'm going to get a call. And anything that I say has political implications. And the question is, can I remain that committed to truth now, where parking spaces and privileges can be snatched if I make certain people mad? And the real question is, can I be the bold little young dude still now? And I'd like to think that I am, but that's, every man has to think about, what stage are you in and what does it mean to be you now?
Yeah, and from what I hear you saying, and how can my actions not only affect me personally, but
Yes.
as a family man, and I like the way you reframe that in the book, as a family man, how does it affect the larger village of people that I'm connected to, right? Because if I get cut off, what does that mean for this group who I may need to advocate for? But now I'm no longer heard because I've now, that's and,
Yeah.
you know, there's another thing you do in the book that I really appreciate. And I love the way you frame sin as missing the mark. You know, I often talk about how, you know, we have puritanical, pietistic proclivities in the church where we think of specific things as sin, but they're, and these are the big things, right? Versus reframing sin as missing the mark. Then that is, well, no, I didn't cheat on my wife, but you know what? I'm not as committed to developing this relationship as I should be, right? And how that gets framed as, I'm missing the mark there. How can I do a better job of getting that arrow to go right into the target the way it needs to be? Can you talk more about that? Because so many, for many of us, particularly those who've been saved a little while, when we think of sin as a man, we think of, I didn't cheat on my wife, I'm not abusing my wife, my children got a place to stay. But you may be missing the mark in other areas of your life that are just as important, and you can't see it because the way you frame sin reshape. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it does. And because we're always, well, the Greek word hamartia, and that's the word, and it carries the connotation of I'm shooting towards it, I just missed it. And we ought always be examining ourselves. You know, where am I today? What are my strengths, my weaknesses? If I were talking to some business people, you know what a SWOT analysis is. And I guess we all need to do SWOT analysis on our lives. What are our strengths, our weaknesses, the opportunities and threats of our life? And, you know, and they change from season to season. And so we're always asking, how can I do better? What is a opportunity now? What is a threat now? What is a weakness now? What is a strength now? And how can I live into all of this and show up as my best self and be that righteous warrior? And that's just it. It's always asking the question. And that's where another dude comes in. That's where your friends come in, because your friends will tell you. You know, I value now, at this point in my life, I'm not going wider, I'm going deeper. If you're not sort of in now today, I don't know that you will be in. And it doesn't mean that I can't meet somebody. I mean, I'm going to be friendly to everybody, but my friend thing is pretty much, they're set. And I'm trying to go deeper in all of them. But one of the things about who they are is they're not afraid to say, hey, your slip is showing. Yeah. That's important. And every man needs to ask the question, who have you given permission to tell you that your slip is showing, that you're backside out? And everybody needs that so that you can check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Wow. Well, that's a great transition into this next. We have about 15 minutes left. And so I would encourage you to ask some questions here in the chat. We already have one question. what is the best way to recover in the fourth quarter? And again, while we're dealing with that question, please send your questions for Dr. Waller. We want to try to get as many of them as we can in. So, Doc, that's the first question. What is the best way to recover in the fourth?
Wow, thank you. And for those that don't know that analogy, we said that let's you know, the 90th Psalm is the Psalm where all of us remember where Moses, who is considered the writer of the 90th Psalm, says the number of our days are 70. And that's where the old saints used to say, when you turn 71, you're living on borrowed time. He goes on to say, and if by reason of strength is 80, so that's 80 years. And if he's on to anything there, then the average lifespan, you know, except if you live in Philadelphia, where the average lifespan of a black man because of murder and all that 69, that's a whole nother discussion. But in the average lifespan is about 80 years. So if you are between 0 and 20, you're in the first quarter. And between 21 and 40, you're in the second quarter. So whoever I'm talking to, and Xavier, this will be you, when you get to that 40, that's halftime. No matter what that's halftime. It's called midlife.
Almost there, man.
Almost there. From 40 to 59, from 41 to 60, that's the third quarter. And from 60 to 80, you know, that's the fourth quarter. First quarter, you know, you can get out and think of it like a game. You know, you try all your plays. You got a game plan. You try your plays. You fumble, you throw some interceptions. You learn. Second quarter, you fine tune that and you start run your strategy. When you get to midlife, you ought to go in and ask how the game is going. Are you winning? Are you losing? What do you need to change? Everybody knows that we call the third quarter the coach's quarter, because whoever does the best coaching, you can tell who's going to win the game by the third quarter. You've seen the first half. And one of the most pathetic things is to see first quarter plays in the third quarter. You know what you got to do in the third quarter. Now, the fourth quarter, if played right, you hold the ball, let time run out. But when you are in the fourth quarter and have to recover, I mean, quite frankly, it's about running the fundamentals. You know, most people think Hail Mary, but the percentage on Hail Marys are very low. It's running the fundamentals. It's the stuff, it's the bread and butter stuff of you know what works. And that literally is it. If you've been passing the ball all game and keep getting intercepted, and it's the fourth quarter, it's time to run the ball. It's time to run the ball and to run not flea flickers and everything else. It's time to run the basic plays, the bread and butter stuff, the stuff that is just true about life. It's about being honest. It's about going to work. It's about building relationships. It's about doing all the other stuff and just committing and humbling yourself to do it right. I know that sounds old and fogey, but there really is some basic stuff to this. You know, getting up and starting your day with God, getting up and going to work, getting up and paying your tithe and paying yourself, you know, running a strict budget. It is making amends with the people that you have to make amends and letting go, because making amends doesn't mean everybody is going to forgive you. Accepting the fact that some things were torn up by you, and grieve them and move on. You know, there are some things, some people may think that I'm being very vulnerable right now and I've shared a lot. There's some stuff I have not shared in this context. And I have to accept that I did it and it's not coming back. There's some things that I have to accept that God would not allow to happen. And there's some things that are off the table for me. It's not going to happen. And I have to let it go so that I can focus on what is going to happen. We don't have the luxury of being 21 dreaming about everything. Not at this season. I'm not going to get drafted by the Eagles. I'm not going to get drafted by the 76ers. And it's just not I will not be wrestling for the USA Olympic team. So there's no sense in me spending time redreaming those things. And so I'm not going to have another child. So I need to invest in the ones I have, and thank God for these grandchildren. And so that's part of it, being real about where you are right now, and riding that horse out.
Yeah. Wow. Here's another question. Comment says, on page 13 of your book, you say the righteous warrior engages in analysis, but he also interacts with God. In other words, he says, I'm man enough to fight when I know I can win. I'm also man enough to fight when I don't think I can win. Then he listens to what God tells him to do and moves forward accordingly. The question is, the commenter says, that when reading that, they immediately thought about the serenity prayer. And they wanted to know if you had ever thought about that comment in light of the serenity prayer, or what's your thoughts about relating those two?
Yeah, and that really is what flows out of that. This portion is dealing with, sort of how we understand fighting. Jesus dealt with aggression in three ways. One time, Jesus ran away. When he was in Bethany, they were trying to stone him. He just ran away. Another time, he was in the temple, and he picked up a whip and he fought. And then another time, they were about to crucify him, and he let them win. Those three things are available to you and to me at any point in life. And a real man seeks God, not our own emotions, as to which one of them we use. Sometimes the best thing to do as a man is run away. Sometimes the best thing to do is stand and fight. Sometimes the best thing to do is let the other side win. And that has to do with your relationship with God and being comfortable with that. God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. That whole piece, I can't change this. This is what it's going to be. And what I meant by in this fight, everyone loves to talk about the faith chapter in Hebrews, the first part. But nobody likes to finish the last part. So by faith, Noah, by faith, Abraham. But the closing portions of the 11th chapter is, and some burned in the fire. And sometimes God is going to send you into a fight that you are going to lose, and it's to his glory. And you need to be willing to fight because God wanted you to fight. And that was what was faithful. And be okay with where that is, because your loss inspired somebody else to rise up. It is on the blood of Metcalfe and Malcolm and Martin we stand. And so they were just as faithful. And so it's that material. It is, my life is no longer my life. It is God's. And it's Paul's language. No longer I, but Christ that lives in me. And I'm willing to do any of those three at any time, even though I see in this case, I could win, but God said, walk away. I'll walk away. In this case, there's three of them and there's only me. I need to run away. I'm scared, but God says, stand. So then I'm going to stand. And then in this moment, I know I could win this, but God says, let them win. But that was Jesus at Calvary, and he could let them win on Friday because he knew Sunday's coming.
Wow. This is so rich. There's another question. It says, when you're trying to recommit to Christ and folks around you seem to just pick at all your flaws and sins instead of encouraging your growth, where do you find the strength to continue?
Yeah. Thank you. There are people who will always try to trap you in your historicity. There are people who will always try, because, and I think that what you have to remember is that people who do that are doing that not as much about you, but it's for them. As long as you stay down, they feel up. And they have defined their world by your brokenness. And so I think you have to reframe it and understand that what they are doing really shows their pathetic behavior and not something about you. In fact, I reframe it to understand if you've got this much time to spend on me, I must be doing something right. And receive it as affirmation, and receive it as affirmation that you are doing the right thing. One thing that I am convinced of is when anybody is recommitting to Christ and committing to do this stuff, the hard work of this stuff, you have to, one, have a morning devotional that is serious. I spend the first 3 hours of every day with me and God, me and my stuff, before I am in the world. It is important for me, and that is, I know that when 9 o'clock gets here and I step out into the world, I belong to my family. I belong to Enon. I belong to Philadelphia. But those first few moments, I'm mostly up about 5:45. And that 6 to 9 is going to be some combination of prayer, Bible study, workout, karate, play the trumpet, read a book, play Xbox, all the stuff that is the unique me, so that when I step into the world, I feel affirmed, I feel complete, and whatever comes at me is not going to destroy me.
Wow. Well, I think our last question, and this has just been so rich, we could go on. There is one last question that says, can you talk about the difference between progress versus perfection?
Yeah.
Particularly in light of overtime.
Wow. Yeah, that's important. That's important. And, that's interesting. That sounds like somebody who knows the rooms, because we're talking about progress is more important than perfection. And I appreciate the question, but I think everybody needs to remember, nobody gets to perfection on this side. It's just not a reality. Our traditional theology affirms justification, sanctification, glorification. We are justified, we are being sanctified, we will be glorified. And in the traditional church, the glorification is in heaven. So even if you are bumping up against 80, even at 80, you will not have everything done. We all die in need of the saving grace of Jesus Christ. Nobody gets to the grave and God says, oh, that one checked all the boxes, let them on in. All of us need Jesus to stand. We will leave something on the table. But I like to put it this way: I'm going to wear out, not rust out. And a Christian, I'm going to wear out. When I close with this, we do our best. I wrestled in high school. My coach, if you lost on the mat and got up and came and slammed your headgear, you see guys, he's upset that he lost, he slams his headgear. You got in more trouble if you slammed your headgear, because my coach would say, if you have enough strength to slam your headgear after you lost, you ain't do all you could on the mat. That's why you lost, and so just do your best and know that you're going to leave something on the table, but you ought to wear out and not rust out.
Wow. Well, Dr. Waller, thank you for joining us. This again has been really rich. I appreciate taking time out of your schedule to share with us. Bethel, we're going to be done, and thank you to all who are watching. Feel free to like and to share this conversation. It will be up on the church Facebook page. It'll be up on the church YouTube page. So like it, share it. This will not be our last time hearing from Dr. Waller, and so we're grateful for this connection and this relationship. Join us tomorrow morning, Bethel, at 10:45. We'll have our, I think it's 88th annual Men's Day with Deacon Marshall Gray, the layman's president for the Northwestern Baptist District Association. He'll be joining us tomorrow and giving a special word of encouragement to the brothers. And so, again, we thank you, Dr. Waller. We're going to ask if you wouldn't mind closing us out with a word of prayer after you give us your closing comments and conversation.
Well, listen, thank you so much, Xavier, for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. To all the brothers who have read the book or who are reading the book, I look forward to seeing you all. If you are a younger pastor, politician, pre-C-suite executive, this also is part of my project with the Righteous Warrior Executive Coaching and Executive Leadership Institute. I take on persons who are looking for coaching, and I take a few clients, and I would let you know if you're interested in that. You can go to Alyn Waller, www.alynewaller.com to find out more about executive coaching. My heart is to help young brothers who are thinking about pastoral ministry, politicians who are developing their staff. And if you've been tapped on the shoulder by your corporation and they are getting ready to take you to the next level, I'd love to help you think through what does it mean to be a leader. So I look forward to that. Xavier, thank you for allowing me to be in this conversation. I look forward to having you all. You all need to know that if I had time, I would want to meet with the trustees of this church, because I believe that you are liable for a check to the Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church for the disruption that your pastor has done to us every time he preaches. Windows are broken, pews are shattered, and I believe that the Bethel Church should give us money to pay for every time your pastor comes to preach for us. But I will collect once the Rona is over. Thank you, bruh. Let's close out in prayer. God, I bless you and thank you for calling us into ministry. I pray, oh God, that you would help us to walk in manhood in a way that honors you and lifts our families. I pray, oh God, that you would be in our lives what we need you to be, that you would get glory for yourself. Bless Xavier in his leadership. Bless all those who have taken time out to be a part of this conversation. Let your will be done in our lives, and we'll be ever so mindful to give you all the praise, all the glory. It's in the matchless, marvelous, and majestic name of Jesus the Christ, and for his sake we do pray. Let us all say, amen.
Amen. Thanks again, Doc Bethel. You all have a great day. God bless you.